Indigenous Australians who have long been habitual hunters regularly practice burning to increase natural productivity in firefighting. Gandhi, Jamara and other groups have developed eel farming and fishing net for about 5000 years ago. During this period, there is evidence of intensity throughout the continent in two millet and sharp onion in Paramount's settlement. General Chatlong Revolution. The Arab Agriculture Revolution, which began in Al-Andalus, Islamic Spain, transformed agriculture with better techniques and the separate of crops, plants. In the Middle Ages, both in Islam and in Europe, agriculture changed with the separate of sophisticated techniques and plants include the introduction of sugar, rice, cotton and fruit trees such as orchids to Europe. And least after 1492, the Columbia Exchange brought new world crops such as corn, potatoes, tomatoes, sweet potatoes, and madness to Europe. The old world crops such as wheat, barley, rice, and turnips and cattle, horses, livestock, sheep, including goats, and the United States. Irrigation, crop rotation, and fertilizer have evolved with the British agriculture revolution since the 17th century, which has increased the global population significantly. Developed countries has been a massive increase in productivity since the 19th century of artificial fertilizer, pesticides, and selected species. With help, the Haber-Bosch method allowed the synthesis of ammonia nitrate fertilizer on an industrial scale, which greatly increased the production of crops and continue to increase the global population. Modern agriculture has raised or has faced environmental, political, and economical issues, including subsidies for water pollution, biological fuels, genetically modified organisms, taxes, and farms, resulting in alternatives such as organic mobility. The path of vision is straightforward. General Chatlong types render here at the basis of animal agriculture for many Arctic and subarctic people includes pet management. Animal herd move from place to place in search of pasture, fodder, and water for animal. Rendered herd are the basic of animal agriculture for many Arctic and subarctic people includes pet management. Animal herds move from place to place in search of pastures, fooders, and water for animals. Such cultivation is done in the arid and semi-arid region of Sahara, Central Asia, and part of India. In cultivation change, a small area of the forest is cleared of cutting and burning of trees. Purified land is used to grow crops for some years until even the soil become more infertile and this area is abandoned. Another patch of earth has been selected and this purpose is repeated. This type of farming is especially done in area where it rains heavily, where the forest is reproduced quickly. This exercise is practiced in Northeast India, South Asia, and Amazon bains. Hand cultivation in Zambia. Living Farming is done slowly to meet family or local needs wherever there is title left to transport. Mascon is practicing immensely in Asia, South Asia. An estimated 2.5 billion food farmer workers in 2018, which accounted for 6% of the land cultivatable land. With low cultivation ratio and high consumption of input, whether fertilizer, pesticides and accumulation in farming is being done for maximum productivity. It is mainly practiced developed countries. Contemporary agriculture condition. China has the largest agriculture output of any country from the 20th century. Extreme agriculture is increased productivity. It replaced agriculture, fertilizer and pesticides for labor, but increased water pollution and was often involved in agriculture subsides. In recent pesticides for labor but increased weather population and was often included in agriculture subsides. In recent years, there has been a response to environmental impact of traditional agriculture, which has led to the movement of organic, innovative and sustained agriculture. A major force behind this movement is the European Union, which first approved organic food in 1991 and introduced reforms to its Common Agriculture Policy CAP in 2005. The help subsides commodity-based farm can be extracted, also known as doping. The development of organic farming has led to new research on alternative technologies such as integrated pest management, elective breeding and controlled environmental agriculture. Recent mainstream technology advances include genetically modified food, demand for non-food biofuel crops, development of former landfills, rising transportation cost, climate change, rising consumer demand and population growth in China and India. In many parts of coast, climate change, rising consumer demand and population growth in China and India in many parts of world are jeopardizing food security. In view of Vietnam favorable experience, smallholder agriculture may be part of solution to concern about food prices and overall food security. The International Fund for Agriculture Development says diseases such as soil degeneration and stinging are a major global problem. About 40% of the world agriculture land is seriously distributed. By 2015, China agriculture output was the highest in the world, followed by the European Union, India and the United States. Economists measured the productivity capacity of the agriculture element as a whole, and by this measure agriculture is the United States is 1.7 times more productive than in 1948. Manpower. On a three-side view, the proportion of people working in agriculture, the left bar green in each group, decreases as the economy grows. Following the three-sector theory, the number of people employed in agriculture and other basic activities, such following the three-sector temporary, the number of people employed in agriculture and other basic activities, such as fishers, may be less than 80% in the least development countries and less than 2% in the most developed countries. After the Industrial Revolution, many countries have changed in the developed economics and the proportion of working people in agriculture in declined steadily. For example, in Europe, during the 16th century, between 55 and 75% of the population was engaged in agriculture. By the 19th century, it had dropped from 35 to 65%. Today, those countries are less than 10%. By the beginning of the 21st century, nearly a billion people, or more than 1 by 3 of available workforces, were employed in agriculture. It accounts for about 70% of global children employment, and in many countries employs the highest percentage of women in any industry. The service sector surpassed the agriculture sector in 2007 as the largest global employer. Safety. Rollover protection bar reopened on mid-20th century. Ford Sun tractors. Agriculture, especially farming, remain an effectively industry, and farmers around the world suffer from work-related injuries, lung disease, acute hearing loss, skin disease, plus chemical use and prolonged sun exposure. Some exhibitors are at higher risk of cancer. In industrial field, wounds often involve the use of agriculture machinery, and tractor rollover are a common cause of fatal agriculture wounds in developed countries. Pesticides and other chemicals used in farming can also be hazardous to workers' health, and pesticides workers can experience. Children with illness or congenital defect as an industry in which families usually participate in work and live on farm. Entire families are at risk of injury, illness, death. 0 to 6 years of age may be particular vulnerable population in agriculture. Common cause of fatal injury to young farm workers include drowning, machinery, and motor accident, including all-terrain vehicles. The International Labour Organization considers agriculture the most effective of all economic sectors. It is estimated that the number of annual work-related deaths among agriculture workers is at least 170,000, more than double average rate of other jobs. In addition, fatalities, injuries, and illness related to agriculture activity are often irreversible. The organization created the Agriculture and Convention Safety and Health in 2001, which covers the occupation of agriculture, the prevention of these threats, and the prevention of these threats. Those engaged in agriculture should play a role. Crop cultivation system. Slash and burn shifting cultivation in Thailand. The farming system depends upon the available resources and constraints, geography and field climate, government policy, economy, social and political pressure, and the farmer physiology and culture. Shifting cultivation or slash and burning is a system in which forests are burned, releasing nutrients for cultivation of perennial crops for many years. After this, the plot is left to reorganize the forest, and the farmer move to another plot and return after many years, 10 to 20. If population density increase, this reduction period is reduced, which require controlling nutrient fertilizers, and some manual pests. Annual cultivation is the next phase of intensification with no fall. It requires even more nutrient and Pests control inputs. Intercropping cropping of coconut and Mexican marigold. Monoculture was used for being more industrial when a farm was planted over a large area. Due to low biological diversity, nutrient and uniformly used and require maximum use of pesticides and fertilizer. In pest, multiple cultivars in which multiple crops are grown in the same year and intercrop when several crops are grown at the same time are other type of crop system called polyculture. In subtropical and dry environment, rainfall can limit the time and breadth of agriculture, either allowing more than one annual crop a year or irrigation is required. Perennial crop, coffee, chocolate are grown in all these environments and allowed by systems such as agriculture farming. In milder environment where the ecosystem was primarily grassland or the highly production agriculture system is the most productive agriculture system. The major type of food crops include cereal, beans, fodder, fruits and vegetables. Natural fibers include cotton, wool, hemp, silk and flax. Specific crop farming is done in different regions all over the world based on FAQ estimates. Production is listed in millions of metric tons. Livestock production system. Animals are to be nurtured and nurtured for meat, milk, eggs or wool and for work and transportation. Animals for working animals include horses, mules, bulls, water buffaloes, camels, alpaca, donkey and dogs have been used for centuries in cultivating field, harvesting crops, cleaning other animals and delivering farm products to buyer. Has been used to help. Livestock production system can be defined as feed source based such as grass based, mixed and landless. General chat long between the 1960th century and 2000th century, livestock production increased significantly, especially beef, pigs and poultry in terms of number and meat weight, followed by a factor of about 10 in production increased. As the milk cow and eggs production, chickens also increased production significantly. The global livestock population of sheep and goats is expected to increase rapidly by 2050. The fastest growing sector of food production, growing by a average of 9% between 1975 and 2007. During the second half of 20th century, using selected breeds, producers focus on the production of livestock breeds and crossbreeds, which increase production while mostly ignoring the need to maintain genetic diversity. This trend has resulted in significant reduction in genetic diversity and resource among breeds of livestock, resulting in similar resistance and resistance to disease found in traditional breeds. Poultry breeding chickens in the broiler houses. Grassland-based livestock production depends on plant material such as shrubs, rangelands and pastures for feeding livestock and livestock's external nutrient can be used. However, the fertilizer is returned directly to grassland as an important source of nutrients. This system is especially important in areas where crop production is not possible due to climate or soil, which represent 30 to 40 million animal. Mixed production system utilize grassland, fodder crops and grain feed crops for infant and monogastric livestock. Fertilizer are usually recycled like fertilizer for crop is in mixed system. Landless system rely on food coming from outside the farm, which represent the non-attachment of crop and livestock production. Artificial fertilizer are heavily relied on for crop production, and fertilizer use become a challenge as well as source of pollution. Industrialized countries use these processes to supply the poultry and pork globally. Scientists estimate that a 75% increase in livestock production between 2003 and 2030 will result in limited animal feeding, sometimes called factory farming, with a small amount of development in Africa. Most of it is happening in developing countries in Asia. Some methods used in commercial livestock production, including growth hormone use, are controversial. Policy. Agriculture policy is a set of government decision and measure related to the importance of domestic agriculture and foreign agriculture product. Government generally implement agriculture policies with a view to achieving a particular result in domestic agriculture product markets. Some of the key topics include the risk management and adjustment, including climate change, food safety and disaster relief policies, economic stability, including the tax policies, natural resource and environmental sustainability, especially water policy, research and development and markets assess to domestic accommodate, including the relationship with global organization and agreement with other countries. Agriculture policy can also shed light on the quality of food, ensure that food supply is consistent and well known. By protecting food, ensure that food supply meet the population requirements, and protection policy program can range from financial programs such as subsidies to encourage produce to enroll in volunteer quality assurance programs. There are many impacts on the formation of agriculture policy, including the consumer and agribusiness, trade, lobby and other groups. The interests of agribusiness have a great influence on policy making in the form of lobbying and campaign contribution. Political action group, including those interested in environmental issue and labor union, have their influence as lobby organization represent individual agriculture accommodate in United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization guide international effort to fight hunger and provide a forum for it. Discussion of global agriculture regulation and agreement. Dr. Samuel Georgi provide the director of FAQ for Animal Production and Health Division says lobbying by large corporation has stopped reform that would improve human health and the environment. For example, Virtual Code of Conduct Prospal is for the livestock industry is 2010, and that provide incentives to improve the health standard and environmental regulation, such as the number of animal region can support without long term damage, where the food commonly company was successfully defeated under great pressure.